Cried me. There's hair in my mouth. Okay, anyway. We are back with, Requiem for a Loud because I just gotta say, this one is more interesting than the Loud House revamp. The Loud House revamp is insufferable. This one, at least, is fine, and so I think we're gonna do this one, and then tomorrow maybe I'll do a Loud House revamped one, and then I'll do something different, so maybe we'll see. We'll see where the wind blows, or something too. That's stupid. But anyway, so we left off on a fun part. It was like the doctor saying, "I'm sorry, Lincoln," so we're gonna, go to chapter 3 now. The neighbors usually looked with despise at 1216 Franklin Avenue, the Loud House. There wasn't a time on the day where they couldn't hear the turmoil guest stated, what the hell, in that madhouse. The real estates had been sued for not warning the neighbors they were buying a house next to 11 hyperactive, noisy kids with little to no respect for other families' privacy. Without any other option, the neighbors just learned to live with the noise. It was like walking under the rain without an umbrella. At first it's really annoying, but there comes a time when your brain decides it's not worth wasting energy trying to acknowledge every single raindrop's impact on your body, so it reaches a state where you know it's raining, and maybe a raindrop on your eye reminds you of it, but you don't actually care anymore. That's exactly how the neighbors were used to the louds. Oh, that's very, metaphorical. Dude, is that a word? It was because they were so used to it that on Saturday night they were able to notice that every other kid's torrential storm was now just a drizzle. Someone from another neighborhood would have been surprised at the sound of electric guitars, television, and what seemed to be carting cars. But the everyday neighbors noticed subtle differences. Obviously, did they mean obviously, or is obviously a word? No one put much thought into it. First, because it was none of their business. Second, because a little less noise would always be welcome. And finally, because they weren't so sure about their perception being right. After all, they could hear quite a mess. Maybe their intuition was wrong. Little did they know, their intuition couldn't be more right. The key, as always, was in the details. For example, Lewin was watching, as always, her favorite comedy channel, Fail Armada. Oh my god, TV was at maximum, and it was always necessary to hear something above all the noise. But that night, her laugh was missing every time someone did something stupid or fell from somewhere. The neighbors didn't hear the sound of an American football bouncing on every wall, knocking down furniture right and left. There's just the sound of pounding on the door's lintel, caused by Lynn's baseball when she was throwing as she was waiting sitting on the stairs. The late show explosions from Lisa's room were also absent that night, for she didn't need her machines to read her medical books. Lila and Lana seemed to be doing the same as always, driving the karting inside the house and playing with lizards, respectively. However, both tried to be as close to the entry door as possible, waiting for it to open any second now. Luna seemed to be doing her routine too, playing the guitar with the amps at full power, but she wasn't playing nothing from the band, from oh my god, Smooch, Wink 82, Bomb Yovi, or Arrow is Myth. Guys, I wonder who that is. Like, she used to do to release her accumulated tension and energy. She was playing a song from We Totally Have a Name, the band the whole Loud family knew she only listened to or played to when she was particularly vulnerable. Neighbors wouldn't find much difference, as they to hear the strong guitars and think it was just another punk rock song as usual. They, of course, couldn't measure the amount of feeling she was putting into lyrics of Dumb Reminders. Okay, wait, okay, I don't know what that one is. Is that, like, a real... What? Guys, is that, like, a real band? Because I know that's supposed to be... Smooch's Kiss, Wink 182 is Blink 182, Bomb Yovi is Bon Jovi, and Arrow is Myth is Aerosmith, because those are fairly obvious, but... I don't know what We Totally Have a Name would be at all. I don't know what that is, if that's even a thing, and, okay, guys, whatever. Honestly, I'd give anything to be with you right now. Lucy was the only one who seemed to be doing what she usually did. No one had seen her since they arrived at the house, so they all assumed she was hiding in the vents, writing a poem. Meanwhile, Lori and Leni were in their room playing with Lily. Leni was resting on her bed, lifting Lily up. The baby was really enjoying herself, laughing out loud and moving her little arms with excitement. Lori tried to smile seeing that. She really wanted to. Smile, have some fun, and distract herself. But the only thing she could do was look at her phone. She had sent 4 messages to their parents, asking how they were, how was Lincoln, and if they would be back home for dinner. The 4 messages had been sent, received, and read, but she didn't have any sort of answer from them. She wanted to keep home, really. She only wanted to convince herself that everything was okay, but being the oldest in the family as big as hers, she tended to worry an awful lot about every single one of her siblings. And even though she would never say it out loud, not even to Bobby, she may worry a little more about Lincoln. The fact that he was in the hospital was really unnerving. Not having any kind of news was just making it worse. None of them would openly admit it, but they all knew Lincoln was everyone's favorite sibling. They didn't spend a lot of time with him, no more than with the rest of their sisters, at least. It wasn't that they didn't fight with him either, not even close. They often rationalized it, arguing it because he was the only boy among 10 girls. How couldn't they not be so protective with their only brother. Maybe it was because they all loved him so much, or because he was actually the only member in the family that managed to always have time for his sisters. Whatever the reason was, Lori had reached the conclusion that he was the only one they could always count on. No matter how sad or how desperate they were, they knew Lincoln would always be there for them, no matter what. They loved him, and right then, they were really worried. "I don't get it, Lori," said Leni as she kept playing with Lee. "In the hospital they give you medicines, right?" "Yes." "Then why didn't they give Lincoln, like, the medicine he needs so he can get better? Why is he still there?" "I don't know. But he's okay, right? Mom and Dad would tell us if he wasn't, right?" Lori didn't answer her. She was checking her phone, trying to find an answer to that very same question. She closed her eyes and raised a hand to her forehead. She was having a headache because of the nerves. It wasn't helping how loud the house was. Until now, she was being merciful. She didn't want to upset her sisters, knowing they were as nervous as she was. But her parents had put her in charge, and she needed to make sure everything was under. Ding! A few seconds of silence after the doorbell rang, and any trace of control remaining in the house was completely lost. Lori and Leni ran downstairs, almost crashing with Luna. When they reached the bottom of the stairs, they found the rest of their sisters fighting to open the door. "All right, stop it!" screamed Lori. Lynn opened the door. Since she was right next to it, she hurriedly opened it, the twins poking out from her sides. "Lincoln?" the three of them said, before seeing who it was. No, I'm Jeff," said a confused teenage boy with some acne troubles, who was carrying two unmistakable square boxes. "Pizza Planet?" Never in his 5 weeks on that half-time job, Jeff had seen 10% so disappointed for receiving their pizzas on time. The three little girls had opened the door, looked at him with a sigh. "Stupid pizza," muttered Lynn, walking away from the door, looking for her baseball. Lori paid the pizzas, and she was able to carry them to the table without any of her sisters trying to grab them. That only accentuated their emotional state. Anyway, as soon as she opened the first special 12-slice pizza, they all immediately took theirs. They ate, enjoying the delicious flavor of melted cheese. They hadn't really thought about it, but they hadn't eaten lunch since they were in the hospital, and they were hungry. With their stomachs being filled again, the loud sister's humor started to get better immediately. "This is great for my diet, since I need to feather a few pounds. Ha ha ha. Get it?" "No, not really, honestly." "The new episode of Princess and Dragons is about to start, and someone has to watch it with me," yelled Lola, looking angrily at everyone. "Ugh, not today. I need to take care of Izzy. He's just about to shed his skin." "Ew, that's like totes disgusting." "Christ, that's painful," said Leni. The pizza is the only thing that can partially fill the empty void of my dark soul. The cheese seems to only be half a Celsius degree from its melting point, leaving it in the perfect spot to enjoy its flavor properties. "It's rich," said Lynn. "Eat the rich. Take one bite now, and come back for more," hummed Luna. "Speaking of more," said Lana, finishing her slice and standing on top of the table, "I'm ready to fight for the last slice of..." Her smile of determination faded as she saw the box. There was no last slice. There was two. "We don't need to fight," said Lori, noticing all her sisters looking at the slice that shouldn't be there. "I bought 2 pizzas." She opened the other one, and they all had seconds. The second half of the dinner was much more silent than the first one. As soon as they finished the meal, every sister went back to whatever they were doing before the delivery came. Lori was going up the stairs, and her phone started vibrating. She checked it. She then stood in the middle of the stairs, completely frozen, reading the message over and over. She then ran to her room. She took her whistle and went back to the living room. She blew it as hard as she could so they would all hear her. They might be distracted, but the girls knew that not responding to Lori's whistle could only bring them bad news. A few seconds later, all the girls and pets were waiting in line. Lynn and Lucy looked at each other after noticing an empty space between them. "All right, listen up," said Lori, walking in front of her sister. She wasn't wearing her glasses or her military jacket, but she inspired fear nonetheless. "It's almost 9 o'clock, and tomorrow's Monday. That means we all have school, and we're already past our bedtime to have They have to go to bed at 9 o'clock? Okay, I understand, okay, maybe up to the frickin' like, Lisa and the twin people and the baby have to go to bed at 9, but the other ones, they go to bed at 9 o'clock? The frickin' 15-year-olds go to bed at 9, dude, what? Actually, sleep cycles take an average 1.5 hours, and a good night rest consists of... "Lisa," Lori interrupted her, standing next to the little one. "You shall not speak unless you're asked to, understood?" "Yes, ma'am," answered Lisa. "Excellent. As I was saying, it's time to go to sleep. You have 10 minutes to arrange yourself, and then you will all head to your rooms where you'll be resting until falling asleep." "But Lincoln isn't..." "Those are my orders," yelled Lori, shutting down any protest. "Now, to your rooms. If I find one of you getting out somewhere that's not the bathroom, you'll wish you never were that brave." Quickly, they all went upstairs. Lori turned away, sighing, and took her phone out to read the message again. Lori, oh my god. The frickin' adjectives. Why is it always blonde, too? Why didn't you do the brown-haired one? Dude... The undie-clad turned around. Lewin was at the bottom of the stairs, some steps under Luna. "Lewin," said Lori, getting back onto it's her dictatorial facade. I think I was clear when I said, Did something happen to Lincoln? The younger one asked with her hands crossed over her chest. Lori didn't answer. She kept looking at the phone. "Did they tell you something?" she asked again. I don't know." Lincoln's our brother too, said Luna angrily, walking towards Lori. If they told you something, you better tell us. I don't know anything more than you do, Lori said, showing them her phone. Both sisters quickly read the message. Lori, take your sisters to bed early and make sure they get to school in time tomorrow morning. Your mother and I will stay here tonight. That's it, said Lewin, getting nervous. Why are they staying in the hospital? Is he okay? What if something happened? Why wouldn't they tell us? Shh, calm down, said Lori, hugging her. Calm down. They probably don't have the results yet. The hospital can't let him go if they don't know what he has. Maybe he has to stay in for a night for observation, you know? Maybe Mom and Dad don't want him to be alone in the hospital, okay? Don't worry. Even though she was actually trying to convince herself, her words seemed to calm Luna down. Lori looked at Luna. Everything's gonna be alright. Now go to sleep. We all need the rest. Okay, Lucy, Lana, Lola, here's your stop, said Lori, leaving the younger ones at their elementary school. The three girls went out of the van right away, going into their classrooms, having dropped Lisa at the local college, where she would discourse about atom colliders and their use on the jelly industry. Only the 5 older sisters were in the van. Middle and high school were just a few blocks away, so they quickly got their school, homework, and being with their friends was just what they need right now. They need homework, dude, what the hell? Oh my god. I'd rather sit around thinking depressively about frickin' Lincoln than do homework. Dude, what the hell? Our PE teacher said she would let us play with a real tennis racket and not just those wooden pallets. I'm sure I can serve a ball from the gym to the house across the street. You better enjoy it since it'll be the last time they let you use them. Please. The moment they see my serve, they'll be begging me to play on the regionals. I'm sure they will. Lori parked the van in the school's parking lot. She was about to get out along with her sisters when her phone started vibrating again. Thinking it was Bobby, impatient to see her, she checked it. Her whole body tense when she saw it was a message from her parents. As she was reading it, her blood started to get colder and colder. Lori, as soon as you take your sister to school, come to the hospital with Leni. Just the two of you. Don't let the others find out. Why them, though? That's kind of dumb. And why the idiot? Why are you bringing the idiot along? She's not gonna help any. She started breathing hard, and her heart was working double time. They hadn't told her anything odd. It was nothing to worry about. Just go to the hospital with Leni. Nothing in that message seemed to imply anything bad had happened. Why then her heart seemed to be preparing to receive terrible news? Lori, you'll be late, yelled Lynn, seeing her sister still inside the van. Lori tried to settle. She had to get to the hospital with Leni without the rest of her sisters finding out. She needed an excuse. You guys go ahead. Leni, come with me. But school's over there, said Leni, pointing to the Italian restaurant on the corner before adjusting her aim. Just get over here. We need to go home, she answered, sounding irritated. Why do you need to go back home? That's a typo, asked Lewin. And why are you taking Leni? Because her brain was looking for an excuse that wasn't a question. What could she? Of course. I had one of those incidents. You know, that kind of incident? Oh, said the four sisters, suddenly sympathetic. Why do I have to go with you, Azalee? Because I ran out of equipment and I need to borrow some from you, okay? I don't know where the heck you have your things, so get in the van and let's get out of here. She sounded so irritated that her alibi looked much more real. Leni said goodbye to her sisters, and she entered the van once again. Lori quickly drove away from the parking lot, driving down the street. That's odd, said Lynn suspiciously. Our house is in the other direction. And Lori already had that this month. I think she's overreacting. Get it? She looked kind of nervous. Why would she? Luna didn't finish sentence. The three of them suddenly realized something. Lincoln! They said, the hospital's that way. The hospital's that way, said Lewin, pointing out the direction Lori went. Do you really think something happened to him? She was reading a text. Do you think they called her? Maybe. Should we stay or should we go? Asked Luna. What do you mean? Of course we need to go. But Lynn, what about school? What about your tennis class? Lewin, we're talking about Lincoln. Fuck that tennis class. Normally they would have told her not to swear, but right then neither Luna or Lewin were worried about it. After 20 minutes of the worst traffic ever, Lori parked in the hospital's parking lot. She got out of the car, followed by Leni, and started hurriedly walking towards the entry. Wow, it must be really painful for you to come to the hospital, said Leni, commiserating her and trying to keep up with her pace. We're not here for me. What? But I'm okay. Why'd you bring me in if I'm... Lori suddenly stopped and turned around to see her sister who almost bumped against her. We're here to see Lincoln, Leni. For God's sake, don't you understand anything? Leni was taken back, surprised by her sister's reaction. She was about to say something when someone interrupted her. I knew it. The older sisters looked back to see Lynn, followed by Luna and Lewin. What? Said Lori, dumbfounded. How did you get here, Chunk? Oh my god, fucking Chunk again. Jesus. Chunk gave us a ride, answered Luna, clearly pissed off. What are you doing here? Why did you come here without us? Listen, Mom and Dad told me to come. I didn't know. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us? Demanded Lewin. They told me only to tell Leni. How could you? He's our brother. Lori's instinctive reaction would have been to yell at Lynn that she already knew that. Maybe her most primitive instinct would have made her want to smack her out of rage, but Lori was just trained to keep it cool, so she closed her eyes and breathed out 3-4 times. Look, you're right, I shouldn't have kept this from you. They didn't want you to know, but you're all here now, so it doesn't matter. I don't know why they called me, so don't ask me. Just keep it down, alright? Now let's go see our brother. There, said Lynn, completely forgetting the rule about keeping it quiet inside the hospital. They had somehow managed to enter the room area without any doctor stopping them. However, Lynn probably just alerted the doctors in the floor about their presence there. They went straight to the room Lincoln was staying the day before. The door was closed, but it had a big glass panel that allowed them to look inside. The five sisters tried to look through it. They immediately recognized Lincoln standing next to the windows looking outside. His doctor was besides him, speaking. "Lincoln!" called Lynn as she tried to open the door, but it was locked. "Don't scream," Lori tried to tell her. "Lincoln, it's us!" The doctor looked at them, but Lincoln kept looking out the window. The two of them exchanged some words. The doctor seemed to be insisting on something, but Lincoln kept shaking his head. Finally, the doctor sighed and went to the door. "Lincoln! Lincoln!" Lynn called, confused at seeing him turning around and heading back to his bed without even looking at them. As soon as the doctor opened the door and stepped out of the room, the girls started to assault him with questions. There were too many girls speaking too loud at the same time, so the doctor naturally couldn't understand them. Okay, calm down. Let's talk one at a time." How is he?" asked Lynn. "Listen, your parents were at the cafeteria. They'll be back soon. Can we see him, please?" said Lynn, consciously ignoring the fact that the doctor had avoided the question. Lincoln wants to be alone, for now." "What?" they all said with one voice. They all started to speak in a helter-skelter manner once again. I love that expression so much. Helter-skelter? That is so beautiful. "Girls!" Fortunately for the doctor, the loud parents were just arriving from the cafeteria with a bag of sandwiches and 2 Starbucks. Wait, like, did they get, pumpkin spice fraps? "Lori, we told you only to bring Leni!" reproached Mr. Loud. What's going on? And why did you spend the night here?" asked Lewin. "Why didn't you tell us what's going on? Why only speak to Lori? We deserve to know just as much as she does," yelled Luna, clearly angry. The parents looked at each other. They finally decide, Christ, and their change of attitude confused the girls. "You're right. You deserve to know. Listen, Lincoln wants to be alone right now, so let's not bother him. Let's go in the waiting room and we'll talk there, okay?" With one last look at their brother's room, the five girls finally nodded and followed their parents to an empty waiting room. Once they were all sitting, their parents drank a sip of their pumpkin spice fraps, and it was then that the girls noticed their looks. They were totally disheveled and unkempt. Her mother was wearing no makeup, meaning she had been washing her face. Both of them had eye bags, and their eyes looked swollen. It didn't look like they had a good night's sleep. "Look, girls," started the mother, but stopped when she couldn't find the right words. "We're sorry we only spoke with Lori. We thought that since she's the eldest, it's better to speak with her first." "About what?" asked Lynn, who was squeezing tightly her chair. "What? Like her sisters?" For some long, endless seconds, the only thing that could be heard was Luna's feet drumming against the floor, trying without success to calm her. "Lincoln, what about him?" impatiently asked Lewin. The tension in the air could have been cut with a kidney finger. "He's sick," said Mr. Lott. "Sick? How come? It was just I hit him with a ball and he fainted." So then, "No, it wasn't that. Lincoln was sick before that. It's just we didn't know. We didn't realize," said Miss Loud, her voice trailing off and her gaze lost somewhere like she was thinking out loud. "What do you mean before that? Since when?" asked Lori, trying to think about the best outcome for this conversation with all her heart that it was going to happen a long time. He's... Mr. Loud raised his hands to his face, rubbing it a couple of times, cleaning out his forehead sweat and massaging his temples. "Now listen, take it easy. Don't panic and..." "Panic? Why should we panic?" asked Leni, panicking. Mr. Loud finally sighed. He took his cup of coffee and took a deep sip. He looked at the dark liquid, and then he spoke. "Lincoln has tumors in his head. A plane could have crashed in the parking lot. A man could have entered that same hall with a gun and started shooting everywhere. A tornado could have ripped off the hospital's roof and dragged them out to the sky. Anything could have happened, and the girls wouldn't have noticed it. They all felt an invisible force grabbing their hearts on its cold grip, squeezing it, impeding its normal functioning. Their lungs forgot their function, and after the air escaped them, it took a couple seconds to breathe in again. They stood still, looking at their parents. They all knew Lewin had inherited her dad's awful humor. They were hoping that any time out, he would tell them it was a joke. Then they could scream at him, hate him for the rest of their lives for such a bad taste joke. They were willing to give up their allowance and never speak to him again, as long as it was all a joke. It had to be a joke. But never in their lives had they seen him so serious. Sorry, guys, I just had to... Oh my god, I just thought of the why so serious thing. I know this is a deep moment, but I'm sorry, I just thought of the why so serious thing.
Why so serious?
Anyway, let's get back to the deepness. What was everything Luna could whisper? "He's got tumors," repeated Mr. Loud. "What's wrong with having humors?" asked Leni. She was absolutely sure she hadn't heard humors. She also knew she was a little dumb and sometimes misheard things. She was hoping to be even dumber than she thought she was, and that she actually heard wrong. "Tumors, Leni, tumors. They're gross tissues that forms. I mean, they're like tiny little flesh balloons that shouldn't be there," explained her mother. But he, how? Lewin couldn't even finish a sentence. "It's a real long name condition," said Mr. Loud, giving his wife sent a genetic disorder. "One of those disorders that only happens in..." every once in a couple hundreds of thousands. But how did this happen? Asked Lori, trying to keep her brain from thinking in what this meant. How come no one ever noticed it? He never fainted like this. It's a sickness that takes time to cure, and he had the symptoms, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter now. So now what? Asked Lynn, finally managed to speak. How will they cure him? The parents were looking at the ground. Is he going to surgery? Asked Lynn again, her fingers getting white for the strength when she was squeezing her signs. Then what? She screamed, smacking down the cup of coffee her father was holding. How do you treat this? Rays? Radiation? Pills? Injections? How? Do we need to get a donor? What do we do? How can we cure him? Her mother looked up, and Lynn had to walk back to her seat, for her athletic and well-trained legs suddenly forgot how to stand when she saw her mother crying. We can't. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. Lincoln thought about the Olympic Games. Everybody was waiting for them for years. People started getting really hyped some weeks before they started. Countries spent fortunes. The athletes dedicated every single minute of their lives preparing for them. They arranged their schedules, their training, their diet, everything, just to enter the Olympics at their best. One day, the game starts. Every single TV channel talks about them every hour, every day. Suddenly, everybody is an expert about sports they hadn't even heard of before. 2 weeks later, the games ends. Athletes go home, and people forget about them. Nobody cares about archery anymore. Who the hell is Michael Phelps? It was amazing to think so much joy and so many things can be contained in only 2 weeks. So many years of waiting, full of dreams, goals, challenges, and preparation. All of them finally happening in 2 weeks. If you think about it like that, 2 weeks seemed like a lot of time. But athletes came back home to train. People got back to their jobs and hobbies. Countries kept being countries. Lincoln was just going to die. The doctor explained it to him the night before. He was sick. He had tumors inside his head, and they had expanded. There was no way they could tell when, but it would soon reach his heart, which would stop working, and he would die. The doctor took his time explaining the whole process of the disease. He detailed the causes, the reasons, the organism responses. It was like he was reading a book. A really interesting chapter of Things That Will Kill You and We Don't Know How to Fix, Volume 5. He seemed to be studying for lessons for an exam. So Lincoln didn't pay attention. He wasn't a doctor. He didn't care about the fascinating history of tumors. He only cared that he was going to die at 11 years old, in 2 weeks, maybe 3. Lincoln never really thought about death. Who thinks about death besides Lucy? No one. People live thinking about life because they're alive. Everybody has some idea about death. They know it's something unavoidable that everyone will have in their time, and that everyone will have their time. But no one actually tries to understand it since they believe their time is still far away. Maybe old people think about death. Perhaps a soldier finds himself thinking about death. A kid definitely shouldn't be thinking about death, let alone being forced to see it as something close. No kid should be thinking he's going to die in 2 weeks, maybe 3. He didn't cry, though. He didn't when the doctor told him the news. He didn't neither when he saw his parents crying, torn apart by the news. His mother's screams almost did it, but it was more because he was seeing his mother cry rather than because he was going to die. He didn't cry the whole night, even though he was awake the entire night with his parents, not even closing his eyes for a second. He wasn't sad. He was mostly angry because it was unfair. Those situations was an injustice, and that made him angry. That's why he threw his food tray against the wall. That's why his parents went to the cafeteria to buy a new breakfast, and the doctor tried to talk to them, even though he didn't listen, because he wasn't sad. He was angry. After he heard Lynn's voice, he heard his sisters trying to open the door, calling his name. And yes, he was about to cry. He would have, but he didn't want to. He asked the doctor to leave him alone and keep his sisters out. He rested on his bed, trying to think about something else, because he didn't want to cry. The door opened. He sighed. Without looking away from the food stain on the wall, he heard someone coming in and locking the door again. It wasn't his sister or his parents. It was probably the doctor. But there was something odd. His steps were accompanied by a thud, like there was something hitting the floor. Oh, it's okay. Just ignore me. You can keep staring at the wall. I'm pretty sure it's interesting with that new food stain you put. Fan of Pollock, aren't you? Lincoln turned around to see the man who had spoken. He didn't recognize him. He was a tall man wearing some old jeans and a blue shirt under a black suit. His hair was short, hoary, and unkempt, with a 2 days beard that he didn't seem to mind. His stern face made him look like a serious guy, but nothing else from him seemed to support that idea. The most notorious thing was a cane, all black with some red flames behind him. Who are you? Asked Lincoln, trying to sound nice. I'm your doctor, the man answered. Christ. Sitting on the empty bed in the room. No, you're not. My doctor's shorter and less handsome. Yeah, that's right. He interrupted him. When he took a small bottle, he took out a pill and swallowed it without any water or other liquid. But that's just one of the doctors working for me. My name is Dr. Gregory House, and I'm in charge of case. Oh, House? Like that show that my friend is obsessed with? Jesus Christ. She's always talking about this freaking house thing. Like, my gorge. I guess it's literally House. My case? Don't feel special. It's just that some cases are harder to diagnose than others. The human body has a lot of parts, as you may know, and a lot of things can happen to each part. Sometimes it's hard to figure out the actual problem. Turns out I'm really good at guessing. I love medical puzzles. And am I a medical puzzle? Asked Lincoln, confused. Not exactly. A pretty particular case indeed, but not as challenging as I first thought you were going to be. Anyway, you're lucky I took your case. Otherwise, you would have stayed for a couple of days without anyone figuring out what you have. God only knows this place's food sucks. Why do you sound so happy? They told me I'm going to die. You speak like this is a game. And you're speaking like your girlfriend decided to play Boo-Boo Bear with the dumb bully that steals your lunch money, answered the doctor, inclining his head with interest. My colleague, the less handsome doctor, said you haven't cried a single tear. He doesn't believe it's a defense mechanism, since you were ready to cry a little while ago. But you refused to do it and managed to hold back. So that either means you don't understand what's going on, or you do and you've accepted it within a day. Either way, it's a really strange reaction for an 11-year-old boy. So I came to see it for myself and figure out if you're just an idiot or you're actually the most mature boy I've ever seen in my life. Lincoln didn't answer. He kept looking at the wall. He remembered how just the day before he had an argument with his sisters about him being very mature. It all seemed so far away. Invisible note, said the doctor out loud, holding an imaginary recorder near his mouth. It all seems to indicate that he's an idiot. I know what they told me, answered Lincoln, frowning. I'm gonna die in 2 weeks. I'm not an idiot. Then why aren't you crying like any normal person in this world would? Sometimes people react different to the same thing. When you're in a family as big as mine, you learn that. Oh yes, I've heard about your Mormon parents. They're not. Still, I'm the doctor here. I had to tell a lot of people that they were going to die. Believe me, everyone has some kind of reaction. I threw a food tray against the wall. Isn't that a reaction? Yes, it is a logical reaction when your basketball team loses or you get an F in school. Damn, it's a logical reaction for figuring out the perfect comeback for a discussion that already ended. Now is it a logical reaction to be reminded of your own mortality but being told you only got 2 more weeks? That asks for a big reaction. How do you feel knowing that? Lincoln definitely didn't like this doctor. He was talking fast, and he wasn't behaving like a real doctor. He was taking this whole thing like a normal chat, without giving it the importance that the situation deserves. As he was thinking about it, though, Lincoln remembered the other doctor, the one that recited by memory his disease, like reading notes. This Dr. House seemed to be interested about him, Lincoln, as a person. Even if it was some twisted medical puzzle way, he wanted to know about him. And strangely enough, that made Lincoln decide to keep talking with him. I don't know. I'm sad, but not as much as I think I should be. I'm not sure I fully digested what this means. That makes sense. But if you're aware that you haven't fully digested the news, it's because you know there's something more than what you've been thinking through, which means you have a slight idea of the implications this has, so you actually know how bad this is. Therefore, it doesn't make any sense. Maybe, but I'm angry. With whom? Nobody. Everybody. It's unfair. Life's not fair, kid. Well, it should be. Why do I have to die this young? Why are bad people living long, healthy lives and good people dying when they shouldn't? Why didn't the doctors diagnose me when there was time to save me? Oh, come on, said House, standing up and walking across them. There are over 7 billion people in this world, and we're just a small grain of sand in this galaxy, which is not even the only one in the cosmos. Do you ever think the universe cares whether it's being fair with an 11-year-old boy that doesn't even have an updated Google Street View? Unless you believe in the existence of a long-bearded man sitting in space counting every time a mockingbird dies in the universe, you shouldn't be surprised finding out something bad happens. There's no justice, no fair or unfair. There's just stuff that happens. Sometimes we like them, sometimes we don't. Lincoln looked at him. He was definitely the worst doctor in the world. A 40-something-year-old man yelling at an 11-year-old boy that he was diagnosed with a terminal disease. Normally, he would be really scared about an adult talking to him like that, but in that moment, he actually wanted to hit him. He thought about his sisters and what they would do if they knew how this guy was treating him. His sisters. Dr. House saw Lincoln's face sad, and suddenly, like he was about to, he looked down and closed his eyes. With a sigh, he sat on the boy's bed carefully enough to not be sitting over one of his legs. The both of them were silent, not even looking at each other. It's not the doctor's fault, House finally said. Lincoln looked up. Perhaps if some of them would have ordered some of a necessary exam of a hunch, then they could have found it. But as I said, it's a really particular case. A lot of variables and coincidences. Did the doctor explain what you have? Yes, it's a fibromatosis neurofibromatosis type 1, completed House. This particular type is when you have tumors on your brain. It's usually hereditary, but there's a little less for 1% chance for it to happen without any family antecedent. Lucky me, said Lincoln with a little resignated smile. House smiled as well. It's a very complex disease that can manifestate in different forms. It can present its symptoms right away, or it can remain hidden, and one day it suddenly appears. There's some signs, some symptoms. One of the most common is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. Do I have that? Asked Lincoln, surprised. How come no one ever realized it? Well, I'm pretty sure everyone knows it. Let me guess. You have some concentration problems. You live turning everyday situations into intricate James Bond-type missions, and you're really good at doing a lot of small tasks, one after another one. Probably playing with one of your sisters, doing their sister's stuff. Lincoln stared open-mouthed, confirming the doctor's theory. All right, but guess what? You're born in the communication era, when the average attention span of the human being has been reduced to 20 minutes, and you live with 10 sisters, for God's sake. If you had an average concentration level, you'd either be deaf or autistic. Only by reading your family records and seeing so many names, any doctor would have assume you have some kind of manufactured ADHD. Lincoln was dumbfounded. Anyway, that's one of the symptoms, but if being born in the biggest family on this state, it looks like a disastrous coincidence, you're gonna love this one. Your grandfather is albino. Pop? Exactly. I mean, I guess, but the thing is, your grandfather's born with a genetic condition, usually hereditary, that can skip generations, that makes him have, among other things, completely white hair. Cool, huh? When you were 2 years old, your hair started turning white. Any doctor would think it was due to slow activation of your grandfather's gene. Of course, they didn't have anywhere else to look. In a year or two, you would have started growing dark hairs everywhere, and maybe that they would have considered you the possibility of your white hair being the result of discoloration produced by little tumors affecting the proper distribution of melanin in your scalp. If that doesn't seem like a series of unfortunate events, then listen up. Usually a tumor may only produce discoloration on a single lock of hair, but yours, it was perfectly spread to make your head look like a beautiful snowflake. Lincoln rested against his pillow and took a hand to his hair. I shouldn't have my hair white? If I had to guess, I'd say you'd either be blonde or brown. All this time? Yep. The signs were there, but the circumstances made everyone dismiss them. It all looked like a dream, like an intricate TV movie plot. It was the perfect series of events for a comedy. It seemed so unreal to be true, and yet he knew it was. He was dying because of it. You know, I usually don't go back on what I've already said, but now I told you all these things out loud, well, maybe the universe was unfair with you. I mean, all this shit, and you hadn't even enjoyed the only son's privileges, like your parents buying you new clothes instead of having girly hand-me-downs. You must have really messed up in another life to have such awful luck. I had 3 cousins growing up, and it was usually unbearable. I pity you, kid. Lincoln raised his head. House was looking at him with a little smile, like he was waiting for a reaction. Then it hit Lincoln. He wasn't telling all of this to make him feel better. He just wanted to see him cry, telling him the details of his unfortunate fate. It was just a morbid talk to see his reaction. He wouldn't allow this to continue. Did you really just come here to see if I would cry or not? Would you like to see me cry? Would your curiosity be satisfied if you see me crying? Tough luck. Do you really want to know why I'm not crying? Because I'm thinking about me. I'm thinking about the time I have left, all the things I didn't do, and all the things I'll never get to do. Because I'm thinking if it will hurt or not when I die, if it's like falling asleep or fainting. I think about me, and I get angry, I get sad, but it's not so bad. You know why? Because 2 or 3 weeks from now, I'll be dead, and it won't matter anymore if I'm happy or not, because I'll be dead. And by thinking about me, I avoid thinking about the other ones. I avoid thinking about my parents, and how much they're going to cry when I'm gone, and how it will affect them. Most importantly, I avoid thinking about my sisters. It's kind of Walter White-esque speech. He paused a second to wipe his eyes, and that he had started to sweat. I don't even think I would be playing with them anymore, that I wouldn't be fighting or chatting with them. I stopped thinking that Lori won't take me to the mall to buy comics anymore and buy me an ice cream if I behave. I stopped thinking that Leni won't be using me as a male model for her handmade clothes. I distract myself from thinking that Luna won't sing me a song when I'm feeling blue anymore, or that Lewin won't cheer me up with her videos of people falling from bicycles. I'm not thinking that I won't be playing sports with Lynn, or I won't hear Lucy's new poems. I don't wonder whether Lola's gonna win the National Miss Princess pageant, or Lana's gonna become the best plumber. I avoid thinking if Lisa will find something that will change the history of humanity forever, and I definitely avoid thinking that I won't be there to see what kind of girl Lily will grow up to be. That's why I don't cry, because I don't think about all those things. Is your puzzle solved now? House stayed there, looking at the wall. He pretended to ignore Lincoln's sobs and his hard breathing. He pretended he didn't notice the boy's hospital gown was now soaked, that it was getting wetter as the tears flowed from his eyes. He stayed silent for 10 long minutes until Lincoln finally managed to clean himself. He covertly passed him a box of tissues, which Lincoln used to wipe his tears and clean his nose. Lincoln didn't even look at him anymore, his arm crossed, looking nowhere in particular. He didn't want to speak with that man. You should have died. Dang it. Thank you, Dr. House. No, seriously, you were just a few minutes from dying. That headache you were having the last few days was due to one of the tumors growing against a brain artery. Yesterday, it finally detached and ended up inside one of the main veins, blocking it. The intracranial pressure started going high off the roof. 3 more minutes and your vein would have exploded and you would have had a cerebral hemorrhage. Had that happened, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Lincoln didn't look at him, but he was interested. And why didn't it happen? Because her sister hit you in the head with a soccer ball. The impact, thanks to one of those unlikely happen coincidences of life that only seems to happen to you, split the tumor into smaller ones and started circulating blood. Then suddenly the loss of pressure was what made you faint, and one tiny vein in your nose exploded. That explains the nosebleed. The other doctor said the smaller tumors went right to my heart. That's what's going to kill me. Are you listening to what I'm saying? The tumors in your head are the ones killing you. The ones that were supposed to kill you yesterday. It could have been sooner. It could have been later. Your time was supposed to be yesterday, but your sister gave you 3 more weeks. She gave you the chance to say goodbye, an opportunity most people don't have. Think about it. Lincoln felt his eyes watering again. He didn't answer. He didn't want to think about it. He wanted to stop thinking for some hours. He just wanted this day to be over. You're not an idiot, said House, looking at him, but with a tone that had... Without looking at him, but with a tone that had a ton of respect in it. I wish I could say the same thing about you. People are idiots. We live surrounded by idiots. And once in a while, we find someone who's not. I've treated hundreds, maybe thousands of patients in my career, but I'm pretty sure you're the most mature boy I've ever met. Lincoln ignored him. House stood up, helping himself with the cane. He stepped away before stopping. He turned around. Your sisters were in the hall when I came in. They're probably still there. They wanted to see you. Your decision of not thinking about them so you don't feel sad is completely logical. The most rational decision would be to stay away from them. It'll make everything easier. It would hurt less. And this comes from someone who loves rational decisions. Sometimes they're not the right ones. You're not dead yet, Lincoln. You still have time here. And if there's a single reason why this life's worth living, it has to be with the people who make it. It's with the people who make us feel alive. I don't have that many people in my life. I don't even have a family I can count on. You have a beautiful family. In the end, it'll be painful. It'll be upsetting. But if you really want to enjoy your last days, don't avoid your sisters. He was standing there, waiting for the kid to say something, but Lincoln wasn't looking at him. After waiting a couple of seconds, House nodded, turned around, and his hand was on the little doorknob when they heard something. Tell them they can come in, please. House didn't turn around this time. He barely turned his head, and then he nodded once again. Farewell, Lincoln. And then Dr. House left the room. The door was open for a minute. He heard some voices coming down the hall, but no one was getting inside the room. Lincoln didn't know if he was really prepared for this. He had cried 15 minutes ago, and he was pretty sure he'd only needed a push dude again. A part of him was starting to regret this when he heard footsteps. Too afraid to look, he once again rested his gaze upon the food stain on the wall. He didn't even dare to breathe. His whole attention was in that stain, and he could no longer contain it. Slowly, he looked up. Standing near the father was 5 older sisters. They were dressed up to go to school. Lauren and Leni had their pants matching their tops, and they looked really pretty, while not too sexy to cause them troubles in school. What the freak? Luna wasn't looking as punk as she usually did, but she still had a black Rhymes and Roses t-shirt. Luna was wearing a common t-shirt, this one with sleeves that went up to her wrists, and Lynn's hair was slightly less messy than usual. What they all had in common was the red, swollen eyes. The 3 oldest had their eyes makeup running down their cheeks. The 5 of them were standing right there. They were looking at Lincoln as if he wasn't really there, like they were afraid that he was a hologram and he would fade away if they came too close. Lincoln also stayed in his bed. He wondered if they had been crying too. He didn't want to worry them. Finally, since no one else seemed to be ready to make a move, Lincoln decided to stand up. He slowly approached his sisters. Lori was the nearest. He usually looked up to her and saw her really tall, really big, a figure that imposed fear and respect over the younger sisters. Right then, however, she looked like a little girl, delicate, fragile. They remained in front of each other for some seconds. Lincoln immediately noticed her trembling lips and her watery eyes that seemed about to melt. It hurt him to see that his sister was like that. He wanted to tell her that everything was going to be okay. He wanted to tell them they shouldn't worry, that it wasn't as bad as it seemed. But he knew those were lies, and he couldn't convince them otherwise. Maybe Dr. House was right after all. You can't avoid situations like this one, no matter how painful they are. Maybe some things were just meant to be painful. He looked at Lori in her eyes once again. Surprising even herself, he managed to smile with ease. It was a resonating smile, yes, but a smile nonetheless. Lori bit her bottom lip as soon as she saw that smile. And when Lincoln extended his arms, inviting her into a hug, she let herself fall right on her knees until she was eye level with her brother. And she hugged him like she hadn't hugged anyone before. And soon the rest of the sisters gathered and hugged their younger brother. 6 souls bonding, sharing a most intimate moment words could not describe, and the 6 of them cried. Guys, why is this kind of sad? Okay, I'm actually, oh my god, sorry. I don't even know why this is actually kind of sad, dude. The way they word these things is kind of getting me. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Also, I hope you enjoyed that reading. I tried to read a little better, less fast and less stupidly. I made a few mistakes, but, when you have, weird neural whatever that word was, it's kind of hard to say on the first take. So yeah, I'm only gonna read that chapter because that was really long, and I'm sorry. I didn't think this was gonna get me because it's a freaking stupid fan fiction, but it's kind of getting me. I'm not even gonna lie to you, it's kind of getting me. But yeah, so that's gonna be it for this Requiem for a Loud chapter 3. Next we'll read 4, maybe 5, depends on how long they are. Yeah, bye.